Who'd be the best Raptor at blackjack or poker? Are the Raptors a lock to make the playoffs? What does a Raptors version of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure look like? That's all on today's Locked On Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your favorite part of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Raptors your first listen every day. I'm Vivek Jacob. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 8 seasons across several outlets. You can follow Locked On Raptors on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. And be sure to check out the Locked On Raptors Discord, where you can talk all things basketball, but especially the Raptors. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. It is Friday, July the 25th, and I am going solo to wrap up the week with a mailbag. Some quick housekeeping. This will be my last episode hosting. Sean is back next week, and so I'm sure you're all looking forward to that. As a heads up, the show will be 3 episodes a week starting next week as we get into the rest of the summer and don't need as much content. I want to say a big thank you to everyone for the support. I've had a blast doing this and learned a lot along the way. Appreciate all the kind words that have come in through the comments, through the Discord, and of course, for the Discord, big shout out to you. Thank you for all the questions and all the great conversations over the past month. So let's get to those questions. First up, Bryjax, I believe is how I pronounce it, asks, we've seen the Raptors bring a huge contingent of coaches in with the team. They build their own court in the hotel. They stay in at a great expense. Is it possible MLSE is actually just rationalizing expenses in terms of moving on from Masai, moving it from up top to other areas that more directly impact the team day to day? Or do you think that sort of investment may be at risk too? So I think these are all valid points that are made. Obviously, we saw a significant contingent over in Vegas with the team representing the franchise, and obviously you got to fly them out there, you got to put them up in hotels, and all of that's got to be taken care of. And the Raptors were there, obviously, through the semis and finals, and that was the goal to get there. And so I think there's obviously costs associated with that, with the hotel, having the practice facility and all of that. What does it say? I think Keith Pelly's visit actually, to me, suggested maybe this is an evaluation period. And I think he might have been there saying, hey, okay, we're spending this money. This is the way things have been done for years. What's really happening here in Vegas? What's going on? What's needed? What's maybe not needed? What can be maybe phased out? Obviously, he would have been in conversations with Bobby. I'm sure there were chats about the president role, but I'm sure this was a part of it as well in terms of the validity of maybe all the people that are there, all the people that are needed to make it happen, what is really necessary moving forward. So I won't be surprised if that's what a lot of Keith Pelly's visit had to do with. I think he also knows it would have looked bad if right immediately after moving on from Masai that they did cut out a lot of this stuff. And so I think he's respectful enough and smart enough to know that, hey, let's at least evaluate first. And so I think it'll be a good thing to note and judge next season, right? Let's see if there is anything that is scaled back on for next year's Summer League, and we'll see how that plays out. The great thing is that this is a high standard that the Raptors have set during the Masai, Bobby, and obviously we got to put Larry Tannenbaum at the top of the list as well in terms of what this franchise has tried to accomplish over the past decade plus. shout out to Tim Lewicki and the way he kind of initially orchestrated everything. And so there's certain standards set now where, as a fan, this question is coming because you notice these things, you appreciate these things, and now you want to hold them accountable to that standard, right? Like, thankfully, OVO Athletic Center is already there, and there's this world-class practice facility. Hey, G League, pretty much every team has an affiliate now. That was not the case when the D League first started. So it's great that all of these things, this infrastructure is already in place, and now you can hold MLSE accountable to making sure that continues, right? And we know what a championship team looks like. We know that, hey, if things don't add up, you can say, this is just Kool-Aid you're trying to sell us, right? So I think it's great that fans are now aware of the standards that have been set across the board, even at Summer League. And that's something that MLSE should be held accountable to. Nico asks, which Raptor do you think fared the best at blackjack or poker in Vegas? Fun question. I'm going to say this is a squad full of young guys, a lot of young players. Even, you look at that starting five, a lot of young players. So I think most of them probably lost a bunch of money, but had a lot of fun doing it. If I had to think about who might have been the best at poker, I'm going to try and think of the best poker faces, and my mind immediately goes to Jakob Pertl. I think he's someone that, if he's sitting at the poker table, I mean, even when you're watching Raptors games, right? It's like, hey, is this team up 20? Is this team down 20? You can't really tell. So I think he's someone that would probably be pretty good at poker, comes across as a smart guy. And so I'm sure he'd be pretty measured at the poker table. I'd imagine if he made his way there, he did okay. Now, if I had to pick someone, not in that veteran category, I'll probably go with Jamal Shed, just because he is the most mature of the group, and so I could see him maybe just having a calmer approach at the blackjack table, or even at poker. So those would be my two picks. I think that Yak is probably the best bet, but beyond that, I wouldn't be surprised if pretty much everyone lost a bunch of money. I will say, Emmanuel quickly does read a lot, and so it would be interesting to know if he was passionate enough to go and pick up some poker strategies, read up on that, and learn, and then maybe he's putting himself in a pretty decent position. So that's, I guess, if you want to call it a wild card, I'll go with IQ for the wild card, but Yak is probably the most sensible bet, I'd say, in terms of who did best. Coming up next, there were a bunch of questions related to the Raptors and their potential seeding in the East and how different things might factor into that. So that's going to be all tackled next up. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And we are back, as I said, getting into some questions about the Raptors in the East. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce this from the Discord. Question from, I'm going to say S. Goddard. And then is it Scar AB? Is it SC Arab? Is it Scarab? I'm not sure. But the question is, are you on the same page as BI that this is definitely a playoff team? So let's just shake out the East a little bit, right? I think it's safe to say that the Cavs and the Knicks are the top two teams. You're probably picking the Cavs to repeat as the 1 seed and win the East again. But I do think it'll be interesting to see if the Knicks can give them a run for their money. Obviously, the Cavs might also have that element of like, okay, you know what? We did the regular season thing really, really well. It's all about the playoffs. We're going to rest guys even more, even though the minutes load was better managed by Kenny Atkinson last season. I could see them not having as much emphasis on the regular season. So maybe that opens the door a little bit for the Knicks to push for that 1 seed. And then on top of that, we got to see what the coaching change looks like with Mike Brown, right? And I imagine the Knicks offense will look fairly different next season. You know, the lessons that he's learned being with Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors, then taking that to the Sacramento Kings. We saw the way the Kings offense really ticked up under Mike Brown. And then obviously it did tail off a bit, but I do think he's got a lot of good pieces to work with. And so we'll see how that looks with Brunson and Cat and if they can push for that 1 seed. But yeah, those are, to me, most likely the top two. Most likely in the 3rd seed should be the Orlando Magic, in my opinion. I think that upgrade and getting Desmond Bane is a big one. They've got Tyus Jones now for some backup point guard minutes as well. So I think they've addressed significant concerns. Injuries were a big factor for them last season, so they'll be hoping Jalen Suggs is healthy. That's going to be a big factor for them. And obviously, Banchero and Wagner had the oblique injuries. Mo Wagner got injured for the entire season. He's back in the mix. So I think if all things shake out in a decent way health-wise for the Magic, they should be the 3rd seed. And your likely bet for the 4th seed is probably the Atlanta Hawks for me. And I think the upgrades that they've made, getting Kristaps Porzingis in, getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard is in, Asanua looked good in Summer League. So I think they've made important upgrades. You hope that Jalen Johnson is healthy. And you look at that squad, I think that should be the top 4, right? At least. And then after that, I think that's where it opens up. So absolutely, I do think the Raptors are a playoff team. I think they could be as high as 5. I think that is in play for the Raptors if all things really click. I think that this is, I've said this before, I do think that this is around a 45 win team. And in the East, with the way things have shaken out, with Lillard's injury and departing the East, Tatum's injury, Halliburton's injury, that's opened up so much. And so I do think the Raptors should be looking at about 45 wins next season. Will that be good enough to get the 5th seed? We'll have to wait and see. Teams that I think are in that same tier, kind of battling them, will be the Detroit Pistons, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Indiana Pacers. I know I've said I could see the Raptors finishing above the Detroit Pistons, and people were surprised by that. I do feel that in losing Dennis Schroeder and Malik Beasley, that they've lost a bit of that core identity from what they had last season. And so even though talent-wise you feel okay about Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert coming in, I don't think they fit quite the same identity. They'll be hoping that, Jaden Ivey basically works out to an upgrade over Dennis Schroeder. But I do think things are going to be a bit different next season just by the fact of teams being aware of Detroit and not taking them lightly anymore. And now they've gone from 14 wins to a first round playoff exit, so there'll be that respect factor. And so I do think wins will be a bit more challenging to come by for the Pistons. I still expect them to be good, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stagnated a little bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if, so to speak, if last year was their like rookie year as a good team, I wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of a sophomore slump. And I think that's what keeps them in that same tier that I'm putting them in with the Raptors. Philly, I am concerned with the Paul George news, the fact that he was just in a regular workout. And now they're saying, and this is key, right? They're saying he'll be reevaluated at training camp. So they're not saying, hey, we just expect him to be ready for training camp. There's a lot of times where we see players pick up injuries and in the summer, and then we get the update saying, hey, they are expected to be ready for training camp. The fact that they're saying he will be reevaluated at training camp tells me that this is something more serious. And so he could potentially even end up missing the start of the regular season. So that's already an ominous sign for the Sixers. Is Joel Embiid going to play, 40 games again this regular season? I think all of that. We know that, hey, if Maxey, George, and Embiid were to play 60 games this upcoming season, I think, they'd be, heck, right in the mix for the third seed even. But I think with the history, we've seen too much that I'm going to put them in this tier and say it's kind of open, right? Milwaukee, they won 48 games last season. Lillard played 50-ish games. And this is a team that went 16-8 without Dame. Now, how things shake out with Miles Turner, getting Cole Anthony into the mix, are they better than the team that was without Lillard for those 24 games? It's possible, because you got to remember Bobby Portis had the suspension as well, right? So assuming that doesn't figure into the equation again, out of respect for Giannis and the fact that he can be so dominant and is the best player in the East, I think you'd have to say that if you're looking for who would be the team to emerge from this tier, if Giannis stays, then I would give the Bucks that respect and say that they're still the ones that, the Raptors, Pistons, Sixers, who will have to take down. Indiana is another team I'm going to give that respect and keep them in this tier, because at the end of the day, what did we compliment the most as they made their run through the playoffs? Their depth, right? Their never say die attitude, the fact that you just can't write this team off. So sure, okay, maybe they're not a title contender, right? Maybe they're not one of the top 2-3 teams in the East, but I've seen too much of this team and their spirit and their mentality to say they're just not going to figure into the playoff equation. So I'm expecting a bigger season out of Andrew Nembhard. I'm expecting a bigger season out of Benedict Mathurin. I think Pascal is going to be Pascal. And then the center position is kind of going to be by committee, right? And they've brought Jay Huff in. Isaiah Jackson is going to be back. I like him as a player. So it's going to be a bit of a timeshare there. And Aaron Nesmith, didn't mention him, so maybe he has a bigger season as well. So I think there's opportunities coming for these Pacers, young guys who maybe haven't had the chance to do as much. And then TJ McConnell, you got to look at him as one of the best backup point guards in the league. And so I think out of that respect factor for their depth, the way they keep coming at you, probably one of the best mentalities for a young team in this league. I think these teams are all in that mix and could be anywhere, from five to the last play-in spot, right? Miami, Boston. Miami might say, hey, we're not going anywhere. Like, we're trying to compete at least, like they're not going to try and go into the tank. They got Norman Powell in the mix now. So I think defensively, that's a backcourt you can pick at between Tyler Herro and Norman Powell. And then obviously you've got Bam in there. You've got Khalil Ware, who they'll be looking for some further growth after what was a good rookie season. And I think beyond that, we'll see how it all shakes out. So Boston, I do think that is a team that is eventually going to hit the tank button. I think, with the way they were affected by the Tatum injury and having to get off all those contracts, they'll probably look at this as an opportunity to say, hey, we have this 1 year opportunity to maybe bring in an extremely talented player alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Derek White for the season after. So I could see them, doing what they can out of the gate, but maybe, halfway through the season, they kind of pull the plug and let things play out from there. So to the next question from Nico, what are the odds the Raptors win the Atlantic Division? So I was thinking about this. The Knicks will obviously be big favorites to win the Atlantic. So I'd say conservatively even, 7 out of 10 times they probably win the Atlantic. It's probably closer to 8. So that leaves 30% for the other 4 teams to fight over. Brooklyn's not going to have much of a chance, so we can leave them out of this. And then it's the Raptors, the Sixers, and the Celtics. So I think you're probably looking at somewhere at a 10 to 12% chance to win the Atlantic Division. And it's going to be about injuries and whatnot playing a big factor. So I think it's slim. I think there's a lot that would have to shake out for the Raptors to finish above the Knicks in the standings, and that would be a crazy thing to see if it happened next season. Mid-range Assassin asks, if we are a playoff team next year, which player do you think takes the biggest leap? So for me, that is Emmanuel Quickley. I was thinking about, what's at stake for him coming into this season. And I think he has to show that he is a starting caliber point guard on a playoff team. I think that's what's at stake for him when you look back on last season, playing just 33 games. I'm going to just write it off as, hey, tanking, all of that stuff factoring into last season. He played 68 games this season before. He played 81 games before that, 78 games before that, 64 in his rookie year. So I'm anticipating at least 60 games out of Emmanuel Quickley. I'm expecting a lot of three-point attempts. This team needs it from him. So my expectations for Emmanuel Quickley are fairly high. I think he is the guy that takes a big leap. Let's see the three-point shooting. Let's see some playmaking. Let's see enough defense with all the great defenders around you. And he would be my big bet just in terms of last season to this season. I have expectations of Scotty. I have expectations of Ingram. I have expectations of RJ Barrett. But I think Quickley, and maybe some of this is, all the talk we've had about his contract, this has got to be the year that he shows out and is like, hey, this is the reason they showed me the money. So next question comes from EJ Abno. Which team do you predict or want to have an ongoing big-time rivalry with in the future? Looking at this question, I feel like the Magic have a lot of ingredients. So you got the Suggs versus Barnes dynamic. You've got, the Raptors had their Vision 6-9, and then Magic kind of went Vision 6-10. We saw those games where they just looked flat out bigger. And then, it obviously helped that the Raptors went out and got Jakob Poeltl. Even if you look at the top of the organization, the Magic have Jeff Weltman, who obviously spent time with the Raptors front office. So there's that dynamic as well. Now you've got Desmond Bane as a member of the Orlando Magic. And obviously we know the narrative that's been out there about, the Raptors could have had Desmond Bane if they didn't pick Malachi Flynn. So now you've got that dynamic where I'm sure from Bane's side, when he goes up against the Raptors, is saying, hey, like, y'all didn't pick me. And then, for a few giggles, you got Grady Dick versus Anthony Black. I'll just leave it at that. So the Magic, I think there's a lot of things that line up in terms of a rivalry there. Cleveland, I think the Raptors obviously have history with Cleveland. The Cavs have the draft pick matchup as well. Scotty Barnes versus Evan Mobley. Then, could Darius Garland versus Emmanuel quickly become something? Can quickly elevate his game to where that's even a conversation. That would be incredible. So I think the history is there. And I think that is a matchup that has provided a lot of fun and entertainment, right? Like when we've seen those two teams play it out the last couple of years, there's been some really, really good games. So I think that's another team I'd list. And then the last team I'd go with in terms of looking to now and the future, the Knicks. I think you got to pick someone from the division. That's where, things can build and brood with that familiarity. And obviously the Raptors have a lot of that with the RJ and IQ trade for OG. So you've got that element. You've got past history in terms of playoffs. Obviously the Knicks got the better of the Raptors the first time. Then the Raptors got their revenge. So I think there's enough history there. You've got a division rival. So those are the three that I would list. To finish up, we are going to get into a great question related to the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Here to wrap up, I teased a question that came in from Duncan over at the Discord. If you were to recreate Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which current Raptor would be the Ted to your Bill? Which past Raptors would you pick up along the way to make the most excellent San Dimas High history of the Raptors performance? Side question, which Raptor would be Genghis Khan from the sporting goods store scene? And would Sean Woodley be Rufus? First off, I'll let Sean have that. He can be Rufus. Now, I've been assigned the role of Bill, but, I'm a big Keanu Reeves fan, so I want to be... I do want to be Ted. RJ Barrett is who I would pick as the current Raptor. RJ is a Saga man. I'm a Saga man. So I think we could relate on that front. Maybe we could, it'll be a high school in Mississauga. And I think, we could have a lot of fun reminiscing about Saga life. Past Raptors to tell the story of the franchise, I think. So I didn't want to go with the obvious choices where I basically just give you a Mount Rushmore. So I wanted to just go with some different choices. I was like, okay, let me pick one main guy and then the rest, let's sprinkle in, some role players or, some really good storytellers, that type of thing. So to go back to the starting years and all that, I was like, you got to have, and also I assume this was players only. I didn't include any front office or head coaches or anyone like that. So to start off with, I've gone with Tracy Murray. I think, he was a part of that inaugural season. I think, he's someone who has had some fun stories in the past. If you haven't read Alex Wong's Prehistoric, make sure you get that and check it out. Just a lot of great stories in there. I've got Muggsy Bogues. I think he'd be awesome. He's got the acting chops. We saw it in Space Jam. So I think I've got to have him in there. And then for the big name, to represent the franchise, I went with Vince Carter. I felt it had to be him because of the RJ dynamic too, right? And I think Vince being someone that RJ grew up watching, I think it'd be cool to kind of have a scene like that. And obviously, there's so much of the story that can be told with Vince, so he'd just be a central figure in all of it. Then, for kind of that next phase of the franchise, I was debating who to go with. And ultimately, and I know I'm leaving a bit of a gap here in terms of picking this guy, but ultimately I went with Amir Johnson. I thought that Amir is someone that loved the city, embraced the city, kind of helped bring back that vibe of players loving the city and embracing it and being a part of the culture. So I thought he would be great to have. And then to finish up, again, not picking any of the stars, anyone like that. I did think about Fred VanVleet because, obviously he speaks so well. And then on top of that, can connect the dots between getting to, Scotty Barnes and well before that and the G League and all of that. But ultimately, I went with Norman Powell. I think he's another one, with a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, could tell some great stories, loves the city, loves the franchise. So I went with Norman Powell. That's my effectively my starting five: Tracy Murray, Muggsy Bogues, Vince Carter, Amir Johnson, and Norman Powell for this excellent Raptors adventure. And I think in terms of who would be the Genghis Khan, I don't know that anyone here would be a good fit. Maybe you could have like Norman Powell just going crazy. Maybe Amir Johnson at the store. But, if I were to pick someone outside of this category, maybe it is like a Charles Oakley that goes a little psycho at the store. So, yeah, I hope that answers your questions, Duncan. Great question. Thank you for sending that in. And to finish off here, Stago sent in a question. Do you have a favorite Raptor on the current team? So this is a really interesting question because obviously I've had my favorite Raptors over the years following the team, but I'm not sure that I have a favorite Raptor right now. And the reason why I find this to be such an interesting question is because it's something, if you know me, I'm someone who covers a lot of sports, enjoys a lot of sports, mainly, beyond basketball, soccer, tennis, cricket. And in thinking about these other sports too, I am finding myself like phasing out from genuinely having a favorite. And I think that's happening because, when you grow up with certain athletes, there is that natural connection where you're similar ages and you feel like you're growing up with them. And even with tennis, it's like I really enjoy Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner and just watching them battle, but I don't my heart's not in it. It's very different from watching Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal and Novak Djokovic go at it. And I think that was like a different level of fandom and having my favorite and having my rooting interest. And yeah, so maybe this is a bit of a cop-out in terms of not answering the question, but I don't necessarily have a favorite Raptor right now. Obviously, the Raptors are my favorite team. I think that's there for everyone to see. But I think it's been an interesting phase of my sports fandom where I've been thinking about this stuff. And even Manchester United, I mean, maybe some of it has to do with the lack of success for Man United over the last decade. But even with them, after the phase of watching guys like, David Beckham and Paul Scholes and Ruud Van Nistelrooy and Rooney and Ronaldo and all those guys, I don't quite have that same rooting interest in individuals, or that attachment, I should say, in individuals. So maybe that'll happen with the Raptors these next few years. We'll see how the years go. But yeah, I answered your question by not answering your question, Stago. But hopefully you hear me on this one. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, really want to say a big thank you for all the support in the past month in having me along for this ride. I'm going to give a shout out to Sean's son, Bennett, for being born and opening up the door for me to host this for a little while. And thank you for bearing with me. And, I'll be in the Discord so we can chat on there, and I'll be making my weekly appearances still, so you can look forward to that, or avoid that at all costs, whatever your preference. But yeah, make sure you carry on the discussion. Head on over to the Locked On Raptors Discord. The link is in the description. Thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast, where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.